Hello, welcome to the final lecture, Geography 102, Transforming the Global Environment, Summer 2024. I'll be honest, my dog's been in absolute pain today. I can hear him in the background outside. I hope it doesn't affect the recording too much, but I just wanted to begin by introducing this lecture, and it is going to be the last class. It is not going to contain any material that we'll test on, but what I hope to do is to return to some of the themes, derived from the learning goals and objectives in this course, and return to those. But all the while, with all the new information you've come across, with all the things you've explored, return very much to this idea that there is no one simple solution to understanding the global environment. There is no one answer. You may find that difficult, you may find that uninspiring, but this complexity is at the heart of understanding the world and the world we hope to build. So what have we done in this class? Just looking back over the previous 7 modules, we've explored a diverse range of environments, of environmental issues, from climate change to population growth, resource use, disasters, food production, right? All of these things. And all the time, and hopefully you really got to this as you're going through assignment 8, these are all connected, right? The global environment, it's global. It's beyond borders. But decisions made in London, in New York, affect landscapes, environments in sub-Saharan Africa, in Latin America. Connections between people, organizations, institutions, and environments have been broadly increased in a globalizing world, but it's also caused new difference to emerge. Some places have got incredibly wealthy off their resources, others remain in poverty, right? Others have got wealthy off the resources despite living nowhere near. That was the point of assignment 4, right? The connections and relationships involved in understanding the global environment and how it's changing are the key for me to understanding how we can live more sustainably, how we can work towards improving the life chances of everyone on the planet, and hopefully how we can build a better world. And I've said this in the first, second lectures, I've said this throughout the course, the world is complex. Environmental issues are incredibly complex. Often they reflect existing political, economic, cultural predispositions. And these clash, and they're sometimes not at all complementary. And what I just want to say, if there's one takeaway from this course, is that for every complex problem, there's an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. It's the old newspaper man, Mencken. Bit of an ass. But this gets to the heart. For some, population growth answers all questions. Right? For others, climate change has become the thing that dominates all other decisions. What I want to leave you with in this course is this idea of a complex set of relationships and connections which together are producing a world that's changing. And we can't understand that and do what we need to do to make it better by reducing the explanation of what's going on to a single or maybe 2 variables. Things are connected doesn't mean there's a conspiracy. I'm not talking QAnon, Pizzagate. I'm not talking about Russiagate. I mean, everyone's got their own pet conspiracies. But the world is connected. And that's what I've tried to show in this class across a whole range of ways. I'm just going to spend a couple of slides quickly, going back to module 4, thinking about population, right? And again, this idea of how a seductively simple explanation of all environmental problems is present in a lot of environmental thought, but also it's incredibly limiting. Because with population, it's not just as Malthus thought, the observance and then, the understanding, the development of scientific laws of nature that you could apply to humanity. Rather, we also have to understand the role of socioeconomic change, wealth, cultural change, changes in how we use the environment, in how we, need labor to use the environment, how a more or less equal world drives certain groups in more or less numbers to, to spoil and overexploit their local environment because they have no other choice. And how technological change potentially can make this better. But for some, still, population remains incredibly important. That's why I began this class with one of the core readings, a classic of the environment genre, The Limits to Growth by the Club of Rome. And at the heart of this was a model that, yes, human population growth was a little more complex than Malthus said, but at heart, Malthus was right. And this idea that at the heart of all environmental problems, it's all about population, still remains and powerful. Malthus, Ehrlich, the Club of Rome, Meadows, right in here, right through to the present, even when we think about pandemic issues. Recall that in The Limits to Growth, 5 key environmental variables were identified by the Club of Rome. Population, but also changes in industry, changes in pollution, changes in the amount of food we needed as humans, and the amount of resources we were using to achieve societal change. Right? And that these would all increase, and fundamentally they were driven by an increase in population growth. And human society could do things to make more food, to reduce pollution. But the Club of Rome, influenced by Malthus, see in population as ultimately the important natural law, the most important, came up with some startling conclusions. They essentially saw that as population would grow and grow and grow, eventually we would reach the point where there would be too many people for the amount of resources we had, for the amount of food we were able to produce. And essentially, what the Limits to Growth predicted was a huge, global famine of some kind or something that would knock hundreds of millions, if not billions, off the global population. Right? The overall point of this course is that that's a story of how humans and the environment interact. And it's a story that also contains, ideas. If we want to protect the environment, we need to use less resources, we need to get, more food, we need to reduce pollution. But ultimately, the only thing that's going to save us is getting the population down. Now, what I'm just saying is that that's very limited. Right? The world is much more complex than this, but it retains an incredible power. We might also think about climate change. Right? On the one side, we have, again, some quite strange quotes, but these are the ones we have from our soon-to-be ex-President Trump. Right? But climate change is something that, for some is a hoax, unfortunately, but for most is a very big and pressing issue. For others, though, it's become perhaps, yes, something that has become a black box that everything is going to, is kind of pointless because climate change is going to destroy everything. Right? But as we come to understand the world, what I'm just trying to get at here is that these ideas that, some kinds of nature, single, ideas are incredibly powerful, is both persuasive but incredibly limited. We're constantly trying to fit our understandings of the world with the science of the global environment and how it's changing. Right? Again, the narratives Trump was drawing on there, that wind turbines are deadly, that climate change is a hoax. These are stories to which environmental facts are added as more or less useful they are. But what I just want as we move forward is to think about, complexity, think about the future, what we can say. We know that the world's getting warmer, right? But how much warmer is directly related to how much fossil fuels we burn and carbon dioxide we pump into the atmosphere. Right? We know broadly what less emissions and what business as usual would look like. Do we focus on the gasoline engine? Do we switch to electric, renewable energy? Do we try and decarbonize sectors of the economy, grow new forests, all of these things? Right? Or do we continue business as usual? The point I'm making is that political, social decisions made in the next year, next 5 years, 10 years, are going to shape the future we build. Right? The options for our future are to some extent limited by the past. Right? We make our own history, but not in circumstances of our own choosing. Right? We know the broad contours of where the world's environment could head. We have a sense of where it ought head. But to get there, it's not about just knowing the right facts. It's about work. It's about organising. It's about convincing people who are still yet to be convinced. It's about imagining and dreaming of what a new world, be that a Green New Deal, a green industrial revolution, a more sustainable planet might look like. You are going to make the world. The question is, what's it going to look like? What are we going to see? Are we going to see a world shaped by increasing unity, whether through climate change, working to decarbonise, move away from the internal combustion engine? Or are we going to see a world increasingly driven, as we've seen recently, with nationalist policies, with pulling up our borders? If you don't belong, you get kept in a cage on the border, even if you're a baby. If you try and cross the border, even if people put water out for you, we'll send troops out to shoot those barrels of water, arrest the people putting them out there, and put you in a cage, right? And call that, freedom. Or is it going to be a world in which, the wealthy countries help to converge, lift up the poorest countries? Should we focus on the poorest people? How can we centre the most vulnerable? There really is not one answer, and it would be totally remiss of me to suggest otherwise, right? And there's not going to be a single environmental answer that'll please everyone. Because sometimes, even within environmental politics, what we ought do is incredibly contradictory. Remember, at the heart of environmental politics and modern environmentalism is this still unresolved question of what are we protecting the environment for itself or for us, right? So what I just want to leave you with is not an answer, but just the sense that there's the right questions, if you ask. You'll begin to get some of the, complexities, some of the potential, maybe, out. And the questions you ask will define the answers you get. We looked at this in sustainability. And I find this idea of sustainability, of sustainable development, to be a very useful focus, not an answer, but a framework that helps you ask the right questions. Are things environmentally sustainable, socio-economically sustainable, right? In all these ways, we're forced to ask questions about who is responsible. Like right now, as we're in a kind of moments of the pandemic, who's responsible for all these extra deaths in the United States, in the United Kingdom? The United Kingdom has been so quick to jump on a natural explanation, a new variant that caught them cold. Some others might look to the fact that they had millions and millions of unmasked children, all the way up to the age of 18, going to school every day throughout, the regrowth of the second wave of the pandemic. And say, hey, that doesn't seem all that natural. Assuming the school children couldn't pass it because school's very important. It's okay, only a few of them will lose their grandparents, no big deal. But anyway, that's Boris Johnson. Hopefully he'll end up in jail, probably won't. But I want to highlight, again, he's an ass, but it's a very complex world. And what you can do is not just centering questions around sustainability, but if at the heart of your analysis, if what you want to do is help the most vulnerable become less vulnerable, then we can begin to ask these questions in an earthquake, because of climate change, because of economic inequality, right? All of these things. But we can't do this by assuming there's a simple answer. We have to take complexity as our basis for understanding through to the end. And honestly, this is why I'm a geographer. This is why I love geography. This is why I think this is a really good intro course, right? Because geographers insist on the necessity of studying environmental, historical, economic, social, cultural, a whole range of processes, not individually, not necessarily privileging any one over the other. Although as we choose what to study, what questions to ask, we are by definition privileging, centering certain discourses. All these issues are important, but geography, more than any discipline, in the context of the environment especially, but really in terms of any spatial activity on the planet, insists on the exploration of these connections. And if you like this way of thinking about the world, maybe you could be a geographer. Maybe you enjoyed assignment 1. Maybe you think, oh, I'll dabble with the minor. Maybe you're already there. Any which way, have a look at our department website if you'd like to know more again about our offerings. Because as well as the minor, the major, we also in the department offer a minor in international and global studies. We've got a minor and now a major in environmental studies. And I advise for all of them. So if you've got any interest, please email me and we can continue conversations over Zoom. Maybe at some point I'll meet you in my office. I enjoy teaching this class. I hope you've got something out of it. You really should have. If nothing else, if you've done okay, you've got your core curriculum goals. But I hope you took some of the material with you and this complexity through. Thank you and all the best. One more slide though. So the exam, there's a study guide in the final module. Have a look at it. It's very straightforward. It refers back to the material in the course, which I'll be doing a little test on. The window for the exam begins at 9 a.m. on Wednesday the 13th. Once you start the exam, you'll have an hour and you've got to finish it by 11 a.m. So make sure you start by 10. Everything on the exam will be derived from the study guide. So good luck. I hope you've enjoyed the class and enjoy the last bit of your summer. Have a good day.